we really transitioned to a smaller suite size. 1,800 is the ideal size, 18 to 2,200 square feet. The spaces are smaller. More guys who can take down that type of space. You got a lot more e-commerce businesses coming in now. A lot of the parks we work on, that's about maybe 50 to 60% of the tenants, other than your, regular blue collar trades. You get a lot of guys who just have new businesses coming into the space and it works for them just because of the flexibility of the warehouse.
Gentlemen, we have here today, oh man, my favorite people, of course, Cody, our wonderful co-host, but we have a special guest, and that is Michael Tran, the one with Colliers International, amazing broker, also specialized in flex space. Don't you guys work together?
Some say that, yeah. Also co-author of Flex Space Domination as well.
Chapters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which the book continues to do very, very well. We're very proud of that. But yeah, we've been together for a long time. Actually, been at Colliers for 5 years now, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, 5 years. We were Marcus and Millichap before that. And then what's funny is we both actually have a very similar starting story into the business. We both were working on the leasing side first.
Yes.
And then got in the sales side. And I think that's actually what makes Michael so dangerous is he's got that knowledge of the lease side, management side, all that. It's where most people that do investment sales, they just have the investment sales side. And so it's always funny when you hear somebody go, oh yeah, you just get that space leased up, no problem. Like it's just that easy, right? But there's a lot more to it than that. And then also understanding how to talk to tenants, how to negotiate with tenants. How many deals have we sold where people bought it and ran the people off?
Yeah, like several.
Yeah.
But on top of that, even the estoppels, speaking to the tenants when you're going in to get these things signed, it's a hostile environment sometimes.
Yeah, renegotiating.
Yeah.
Now dealing with somebody that's out of state, we've seen it all on the leasing side, and that's what people really don't realize is they look at it and they go, oh man, it'd just be great to just collect rent from these guys. That's what we want to do. Well, there can be an art form to it, and we see a lot of people come in and try to lease it themselves, and sometimes they're successful if they've done it before. But yeah, that's actually how I met Michael. He was leasing at the time in the mid cities where I started my career, and I said I gotta have him. Can't live without him. Gotta have him. And now we're trying to figure out how we get rid of him. Can't have him around. No, I'm kidding.
So what got you, Michael, interested in flex space? How did you, because you started doing this at Marcus Millichap, right?
Yeah.
Why flex space? What started that before the one and only Cody caught you?
When you're running around and working on 3 different product types, retail, office, industrial, and you get exposed to a lot of things very fast, and you kind of see where the tenants are in each space. So like, for example, retail, a normal call I would get is I need 6 months free rent. I need $90 a square foot in TI and no personal guarantee on the lease, no nothing. And, that was the majority of what I was working on at the time. And I wasn't really fond of a lot of these people who kind of just like shoot at the hip kind of guys. So then I was like, okay, maybe I like office a little bit more, start working on the office, more straightforward people, way more professional.
Forward thinkers, Yeah.
It was a little bit better too, because like the office spaces would be AC'd, and a lot of those retail spaces I was showing were like cold dark shell or just no electricity on, or it had been stripped of all the copper at the retail center because it had been sitting vacant for so long.
Texas summers aren't friendly for leasing agents, just so you know.
That is right.
And so I was like, okay, working on this, dressing a little nicer. Guys are a little bit more snobby too. So I was like, I got to find a happy medium. Found some industrial stuff I started working on in like Grand Prairie, Arlington area, GSW specifically, and easiest deal I ever done. I was super excited. I was like, wow, you can do these like 10,000 square feet deals, 20,000 square foot deals, so much easier. They know what they want. You show them a few options. They don't have many to pick from either. And so you're like, hey, it's one of these 3 or 4. So like I was doing 8 to 10 lease deals where I was showing one tenant 10 spaces. I can do these 3 or 4, the larger size deal, more straightforward. It's just easier. And so then once we start working together,
don't make it sound like your job's so easy though. Like
it's just, not easy.
Okay,
it was just a lot easier compared to what I was doing.
That's how I sell people too. This is a very difficult job, sir. Like and Tran's over here like, this is the easiest thing we've ever done.
Well,
we're stealing candy right now.
It's only because I was like me. I mean, he knows how I am. I got to get all the data. If I have all the data, I will know everything. But when you know a lot of everything, it's like hard when there's other agents who just specialize in that one niche. And so, I'm competing against niche guys in retail, niche guys in office, niche guys in industrial. So I was trying to do all three. So I'd have to work like 3 times the amount just to keep up. And so I caught myself a lot doing a lot of defense. So I was like, hey, let's just focus, brought it down to 2. Then, finally Cody and I joined up together, started working on a lot of the office initially. And then I picked up a flex deal one day and we did that sale, which was also the easiest sale I had done.
What was the first one? Was it Irving?
Yeah, it was in Irving.
Yeah, it's pretty easy.
That one,
It was.
he goes, hey, if you get this one, like, it's sold tomorrow. And I was like, really? So that's what I did. Picked it up, got the deal. I was like, I think this is what I like. Now I don't even have to really show up to the facility. I don't have to show up to the office building and walk these common areas with these investors. And so I was like, why aren't we doing more of these if these sell so easily? And he's like, well, just go get more. And so that's what I did. And here we are.
If it's so easy, go get more. The only reason that I'd say that it's easy for us to sell is, just because we've been doing it for so long. When I got started a long time ago, we just built up such a good buyer database. So then we do have one, we can usually make it pretty competitive pretty quickly, and that's what makes it easy. But it's definitely a much different, as you just explained, a much different asset class than several others, and that's why so many people have been coming over to it. We were at that self-storage convention I think I was telling you about out there in Austin, and so many of those guys are trying to come over into it.
To your point, Cody, people that are really good at something make it seem easy. And I think both of you are very good at this product type. And when you're good at it, it seems easy, especially if you like it. So that's awesome. Now, I want to go back to the leasing experience, because I think that's something that a lot of our listeners are interested in. And maybe it's an encouragement to other brokers that are in this space. So you found it easier to lease because people had a couple things, because they had less options, right?
Correct.
And the size was maybe perfect because they were either looking at things too big.
The blocks of spaces available are only so limited in certain areas. So there's only so many 8,000 square foot blocks in this submarket where, they pull all their employees from, and the employees are, only going to drive to this submarket, which is in between for everybody. And that's what they're used to. A lot of the time, they're trying to stay within that 10-minute range of where their current facility's at if they're, downsizing or moving into a larger space.
Okay, got it. Yeah. Okay. Can you give us some pointers on why flex space tends to lease faster or easier, other than a couple of things you just mentioned?
We really transitioned to a smaller suite size, which is, I'm sure you guys have talked about 1,800 is the ideal size, 18 to 2,200 square feet. And so the spaces are smaller. More guys who can take down that type of space. You got a lot more e-commerce businesses coming in now. A lot of the parks we work on, that's about maybe 50 to 60% of the tenants I've been noticing, other than your, regular blue collar trades. But you get a lot of guys who just have new businesses coming into the space, and it works for them just because of the flexibility of the warehouse, how you can grow with them, they can grow with you. And, they're usually working with the owners pretty closely if there's a good owner-tenant type of relationship, which I think a lot of these flex guys have grown with, because a lot of flex guys who develop now and are selling, they were also similar to these tenants.
That is correct. I mean, that's why we're developing them, because I once was that type of tenant, right? Through our service businesses, from our window treatment business to our construction business, and then way back in the day, I had an alarm business as well. So this was the perfect type of product for our business. The most popular size currently, you're saying, that's going fast, between 18 to 2,200 square feet. This is actually a great topic, as I was talking to our construction manager this morning, because we were trying to decide on our layouts for our deal in Midlothian. And one thing that came about was, in a conversation, we currently have it laid out for 1,800 square foot, between 18 to 900 square foot units, right? We have a building of 6,000 square feet. We can demise it up to 3 units, which is right around that 1,900 square feet. So the way we're doing it currently is we already have the layout and we're submitting it to the city, right? However, with that, we're kind of committing to that layout, right? If a tenant comes along in our pre-marketing and they decide, hey, we actually need 2 units or we need the whole building. And so me and him were kind of going back and forth about it. I said, no, let's just move ahead with the current layout we have. Let's get the permits. Let's start building. And then midstream, if we have a tenant that decides they need a bigger unit, and for some reason we want to accommodate that because of maybe the rate, that we're going to get, the type of commitment we're going to get, maybe it's worth doing, then we have to kind of go out and submit a different layout plan for that building, which might impact the CO for the entire project, right? So we were facing the decision, do we white box it now or do it in the smaller units? And so I decided, and you guys can tell me if I was wrong about this because we still have time to change, but I decided to say, hey, no, let's go ahead with our layout because I believe 60 to 70% of our tenants will just want that 1,800 square feet. So, and that's the majority of the people. Let's go with our layout plan. And if we need to change a couple buildings out of the 6, maybe a couple buildings will have tenants that need more than 1,800 square feet, we can deal with it at that time, instead of accruing costs now by changing and having our architect and civil engineer company resubmit a different layout plan to accommodate just a white box. Does that make sense? So
yeah, it does. I think you're on the right track. I mean, you always want to make these buildings that's what makes them flexible is, having that ability to go from that 1,800 to, adding on another space, or even downsizing at that point. So even if you're like 2,000 square foot increments, or you're 2, 4, and 6, that's what makes them flexible is they have the ability to kind of expand and go into that. And the best thing about these is, bar the entryway, they're pretty easy to put into that category because your electrical components, those are usually done in the latter part anyways, whenever you start bringing in the electrical boxes and things of that nature. And so really all you got to do to make sure you're accommodating that higher tenant pool or the larger tenant pool is your entries, right? How you're segmenting the entryways and your plumbing stubs. That's why layout is also very key, and putting your plumbing in the right areas. And, obviously most of the electrical is always at the back anyways, but I think you're on the right track. I mean, that's how we always advise people to do. And if you're doing a heavier multi-tenant park, we always say just go ahead and add, go ahead and finish out a couple of spaces, add an office, add a restroom, go ahead and have something move-in ready because those lease significantly faster than a cold, dark shell.
That's right. Yeah. So that's kind of what I was thinking. I was like, hey, let's get 2 or 3 of these buildings built out at the 1,800 square feet per unit, get them leased out, and then kind of keep a couple buildings that will have some flexibility. Because then at least we're getting predominantly most of our project leased up, getting income in, right, to pay the mortgage. And then the 2 buildings that we have left that we really want to consider a bigger user, because the advantage of having less users, you have less people to deal with.
Yeah, you also have more risk.
That is true.
You have a bigger drop in vacancy. And so that's why you have a lot of buyers that like stuff under a certain amount of square footage. Like they'll tell us all the time, right? We don't want somebody that takes up more than 20% of the project, because if and when that 20% tenant leaves, that could be the difference in negative cash flow with the loan or not. And so, but it also all depends. Then you got all your people that like your single tenant net lease, where they like banking on one tenant because it's easier and there's less headache overall. And so it just really all depends on what you're going for. The more risk-averse stuff that has higher risk usually pays a higher return. Lower risk is usually lower return. And so that's how investors look at flex.
Got it. This is a great topic, by the way, guys. We just kind of slipped into that one, right? So is there a particular ratio that you mentioned 20%? Is that kind of the number maybe? That's
what
like
a lot of larger owner-operators and investors say.
80% smaller units, 20% will kind of be flexible with?
Well, no, they just don't want anybody taking more than 20% of the project. So they don't want one tenant taking too much space. In office, it's similar in office and similar in retail too. I mean, there's a lot of buyers that are very similar in those categories also, because they don't want to risk losing a tenant and now they're negative.
Right.
Because that one tenant takes so much space. And so that's what Small Bay is so good about and that's why a lot of multifamily people like it and self-storage guys like it, because it's like the multifamily of the light industrial world. And you can lose a few tenants in some of these larger parks and really not notice it as much. And that's really what we tailor to as well.
That makes total sense. I've got Tanis here who manages our office. Fantastic person, individual. She's with me in the weeds on some things. We have some rentals, and I've noticed there too that when 1 or 2 tenants drop off, you don't notice it as much. I mean, it's happening, but it's not like you're not panicking. It's not critical, right? So I think that's the same theory that we're discussing here, is that if you can spread your risk, that if you have a drop or 2, like for example, our Midlothian deal is an 18 unit horizontal flex space park. I was going to say multifamily. We don't like multifamily around here.
It's just like if you own a mall and Dillard's leaves and you're like, oh God, we got to get a Halloween store in here now. It's no different than that. And so
half and half.
Yeah. Half and half. How do we get a trampoline park in this thing as quick as possible?
That's right. No, I love that. What more about leasing should developers think about that you feel like are some great tips other than hiring you guys?
Well, we don't lease anymore. We've got guys in our office that do lease.
Right.
What do you think are some of the common mistakes people make? Because a lot of people think they can do it themselves, especially if people out of state.
Yeah, that's the thing. These tenants are so fast moving. There's options out there for them, and so you almost have to be there like on site immediately, or meet them that day or that week at least.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen so many guys just sign a lease somewhere else because this guy took the first phone call.
Right.
And so I think getting a newer, younger agent on your deal, or somebody who does and has a track record of like high volume leasing, is really critical. Have you guys covered the differentiating yourself from others?
I'm sure we have, but go into it. But
tell us,
but
Tran.
also, just to add on to what he said, I mean, he's right. A lot of these guys will lease very quickly, and you got to be very active on it. But you also want to be careful too, because when someone comes up to you, is like, "I need space in 2 hours," you got to, all right, well, what's the problem here, right? Just like my wife the other day is like, "Hey, I need $20." I'm like, what? Somebody after you? Like, what do you need that money so quickly for? Like, and so
there's a vetting process.
Yeah.
too. You gotta ask the right question. Sorry, I think it's just having that where you're like, okay, is this guy legit? Walk through what's your business, all those questions that normal guys typically ask for leasing, which is financials. Do you have any? How many locations? Where are you at now? Are you moving? Stuff like that. So, but yeah, definitely being there quickly is key. And then, going back to my point about differentiating yourself, we talk about this market all the time, South Fort Worth market. There's a few families running around down there that build a lot of this stuff. And a lot of the stuff down there is your basic,
just like South Dallas and
no amenities, no nothing, no security of any sort. All of it looks the same. The supply is caught up to the demand out there. And so we've seen rental rates go backwards in that market where, we worked on stuff out there prior to COVID, and those rates are going backwards.
Yeah. East Texas has similar issues too in some markets out there.
East Texas can't even see over $9 gross. Some places.
And nice product too.
Parks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to that later.
Are these ETJ type deals outside the county?
For the most part,
Okay.
but yeah, we visited a project out there in East Texas. Was that Longview or Tyler, where that space had literally been vacant for like 3 years? Is the front one?
You mean White Oak?
No, I thought it was Longview, but
All on the same.
yeah,
Right.
Tran's done a
East
lot of
Texas.
business out there, so I was trying to remember the address of it. But there was a park that we visited, and it's because he had a shell and never finished it out. It was front. They were kind of like retail style. Tyler. And been vacant for 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah. But their issue was it was a cold, dark shell, didn't even have electricity to it. So anybody that wanted to lease it, they couldn't even get in for a couple months.
So the one thing we've already learned, listeners, with these wonderful brokers, Cody and Michael, we've already got some nuggets here. What I'm hearing is finish the building.
Yes.
Yeah.
Put some electrical in it, get some plumbing in it, finish some sheetrock, get an office, get it ready to be moved in. Is that the best course of action?
Yeah.
Okay.
But also the guy we visited, he said, I could have this thing plumbed in 2 weeks.
Right.
I was like, tenants can't see that.
Right.
A lot of them are very like, what's
And does it really happen in 2 weeks?
No.
Well, because then he still had to bring in electricity too,
Permits, inspections.
and do put in all the electrical outlets and whatnot, and so that takes additional time. And you're right, and out there they did have to go get permits for it, and so that was their issue. Is anybody that needed a flex space, it's like, hey, we can build you out a space here, but you can't get in for a couple months, or they could call the neighbor and get in tonight.
When is too early to pre-lease?
We started at 6 months
So
on any new development.
So 6 months from completion.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is quite early still.
It's very early.
Okay.
But what you'll find in that time period is usually not the smaller guys, but sometimes the larger guys.
Yeah.
So that way you can customize their space because you're now at that point where you're doing that. And so that's where we found why you want to start pre-leasing at that time, because sometimes your larger user will come in and say, hey, we'll take a whole building. Can you do this, this, and this to it?
Right.
And so that's why we always say start 6 months prior to completion.
That's right. Okay, great. This is a fantastic subject today because we're discussing this morning with the team. And so again, we have our Midlothian deal. So I think the plan of action for us was to at least get 3 or 4 of the 6 buildings finished out, ready to go, and then leave, maybe not purposefully, but we want to be flexible with maybe 2 remaining buildings to potentially attract that single user or somebody that wants 2 to 3 units, which would be a building or a third of a building. Do you think that's a fair assessment or a fair way to approach it?
Absolutely. That's exactly how I'd approach it.
What is good advice?
Yeah. You had some decent advice here and there.
What are some, I know you said, hey, give me some, for example, you have a potential tenant that picks up the phone, calls you, and says, hey, some of the qualifications are obviously you want to see their financials. What all do you want to see in financials? Because, the users for FlexSpace are not as sophisticated as a credit, large firm, right? What are the things we're looking for in financials to kind of like, what's the word I'm looking for to?
Well, I think the question, what I would add on to that as well is, what do you look for when a tenant wants to come lease? What do you look for in that tenant? And then do you get a personal guarantee signed every time on top of their entity? Some of these guys are already signing personally because they don't have an entity. When a tenant comes to you, Tran, what's the best course of action? I mean, are you running credit reports? What are you doing to qualify this guy to make
that was the
sure
word I was looking for earlier.
Qualify, yeah.
It's my ESL.
Hey, trust me, that's
ESL.
what the Cadillac dealer said to me. He's like, we need to see if you're qualified, Mr. Payne. Might have to send you to the used lot.
That's
So,
right.
All right. So how do you qualify these guys?
If you want to be very upfront, and yours is a nice park. I think I've seen renderings. So
Class A.
yeah, you're almost hitting them with a credit application or a tenant application form, which we can send to you so you can see. But
Is that running their personal credit?
yeah, and you can also do background checks also, but you also want to see, hey, where's current bank statements? Give me like 6 months worth. Let me see. You're a more private individual, so you can see like, okay, do I trust this guy to make it? Where's his trajectory going in his business? And you can almost make that decision yourself, but we're usually sending those almost immediately if they're one of those guys that's like, hey, I need this today, or, I need this in 6 months, and then you can work with him to build the space however they'd like as you're developing.
So are you getting, are y'all asking for bank statements to show how much money they have in the bank? Are you looking at business income as well?
I'm looking at both.
Looking at both. Okay. And then how do you know if you need to get a personal guarantee signed? Everyone? Everyone?
You want to try to push for it every time if you can, but, just depending on their business.
What are some exceptions when you wouldn't?
You can't get it from higher level guys. Like if you get like a corporation, a larger corporation that's putting
Right.
satellite office there, satellite location, you know, like a Fastenal or somebody coming in. I mean, they're not going to sign personal guarantees.
So we're talking about a small business individual that maybe has 2 or 3 employees. Their butt's on the line for everything, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are some pros. What are some other pros? Financials, really, that's probably it, right? Their business type, of course. You want to make sure that you want them in your park. We don't want like some oil changing company in one of our parks.
Or if you do, you want to outline certain rules and regulations for them and put the landlord in control of, what happens. And we run into that with car guys all the time, body shops, mechanics, where we'll tell the owner, hey, if you're going to sign these guys, perfectly fine, no problem, do it. Just make sure you have these rules and regulations, which ours is a 2-pager that basically says, hey, you parked too many cars, we give you multiple notices and they're not moved, we can move you out at that point. Or, you're now in default or things of that nature. And so you want to, because those are the guys that really clog up the parking lots too.
Right.
And so even though they can be great tenants and they can pay a lot of money, which is fantastic, you always want to make sure that, because a lot of these parks, sometimes your parking is very thin. That's what we see in most of these that are built is very thin park. And so we're working on a project right now out there near Mansfield, and the one next door only leases the body shops, and you can't even drive down the driveway.
Yeah, they're awful.
And so you don't want to get in that kind of position, because also that creates environmental issues too. Because I've actually been on an environmental inspection, and a car came into the mechanic shop and was actively leaking antifreeze onto the ground as the environmentalist was standing there. And I mean, there's nothing you can do. So he dings it, and so now you're paying $15-20 for phase 2, so they can, drill core samples out there. So you want to make sure. And so, but if you got stuff protected in that lease, it's like, hey, now you can go to that tenant and say, hey, buddy, you caused this problem. Now it's time to fix it. And so, but that's just also, making sure everybody applies to the same rules and regulations, so we don't, nobody's favorited. But that's the thing that I know that Nick and some of those guys add into their stuff is the ability to remember.
I think I've seen them recently put in like charging per car.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, for a certain amount of time too.
It scares them.
So I know in our parks we don't want any kind of car mechanics whatsoever. Because I feel like once you kind of give them the leeway and they're parking their leaky trucks and all the other cars that kind of spill out the shop, you're now kind of chasing away some of the other tenants, right?
No, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Because they don't want to be around that. So it's kind of liability once you bring a car mechanic, right? It's like, okay, this just turned into now the car shop park, where it's a bunch of car shops, body shops, transmission shops, brake shops. So you kind of almost have to commit to that if you let one in. Now, a car dealership, how do we feel about car dealerships? Is there some clean, classic, exotic car rentals?
I like the ones that do the nicer cars that store them all inside.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't mind those higher end internet sales
Car
guys.
storage.
Yeah, and the ones that do like higher end internet sales of nicer stuff, we've seen plenty of those.
Okay.
What do you call it? Not the cash advance payday shops, but the
Pay today or pay
whatever. Those guys, they'll be a little trickier because there's so many cars coming in and out. So,
Right.
like I said, as long as you protect yourself in rules and regulations and outline certain parking spots for them, that's really all you got to do, and just enforce it. That's where property management comes into place.
I love it. Going back to leases and kind of looking at financials and kind of looking at things that qualify a potential tenant, what are some red flags?
granite companies that need to be in now and pay the whole lease up front. Guys like that I've seen come into some spaces.
Why would that be a red flag if they want to pay the entire lease up front?
Not a real granite company.
Oh,
Wow.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Hey, I have no war against the cartel, but you heard it here first.
Interesting.
I've seen them.
Do they ever bring any equipment in once they have the lease signed, or you just always refuse them?
You kind of get the feeling once you meet and you kind of know the deal and what's up.
Okay.
So you just,
That's why having a good leasing agent is good too, because you don't need a lease person that comes in and just puts in a bunch of tenants that aren't good quality tenants either. And we've seen that too as well. One of our guys picked up a park to lease, and they're looking at the rent roll, and they went walking out there, and I remember he said, he's like, man, like there's like 5 or 6 tenants that aren't even here. Like they're not even real tenants. Like,
Right, they
but
just
the
got a
previous
mailbox.
leasing agent, well, no, not just that. Like the previous leasing agent just did the lease so they could get paid a fee, but didn't really qualify the tenant. So the tenant,
Ooh,
maybe
nasty.
moved in for a month or so, but that agent got a good fee on it. And so that's why I'm saying, like, having a good leasing agent, if you're not going to do it yourself, is very vital, because a lot of them are out there to, just make a paycheck. And flex leasing, if you don't specialize in flex leasing, you shouldn't be doing it, because the best way to make money is to do it on a high velocity scale.
That's right.
That means doing a lot of them.
Yeah.
And that's where you make your money, is by doing a lot of them, not doing a little here and then going over here and doing a retail lease and then going up here and doing an office lease. Like, you don't want a generalist, you want a specialist.
Do you have somebody in your office that is a specialist?
Yeah, Nick does it. We've got a couple other Colliers guys across the country. We've got some good guys at Land Park in Houston as well. But yeah, that's a mistake that we probably see made, is them not hiring a specialist, because like my shoulder hurts, I'm not going to my dentist, like I'm going to a shoulder specialist, right? And so it's no different in real estate. Just like if you had a multifamily complex and you said, Cody, get me the highest dollar you can, I assure you I will not be.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other red flags, Trent?
no, that I think that's
That was
all
a
I
good
can-
one.
Yeah, that's all I can
Watch for the cartel.
Dude,
Especially, don't have a lease agent that has a cocaine habit, right?
I mean,
They'll make that deal happen.
yeah.
Cody, what are some other things that developers need to kind of get ready when they're about to be done with their development? How should they go about to get ready to market? Is their best bet with an agent? Like, at what point? I know there's some types of parks that you don't want to deal with because they're too much of a hassle, right? They're too small of a deal. What kind of deals do you guys take on?
So,
For leasing,
as
specifically.
far as leasing goes,
I know you guys do the sales fantastically.
I mean,
but
it's really up to our lease guys.
Okay.
And if they believe that they can make there's a pathway to make a certain amount of money, or if they can lease it up to a certain metric and then we get the sale on it and they get a portion of it, then sometimes that makes sense. But we leave that up to them. We don't tell them what to take or what not to take. I mean, we want them to have success and want to work on it, if that makes
Sure.
sense. And that's how we feel too on any project. I mean, we've turned down projects if it just doesn't excite us, or the ownership and us. I mean, we're just on 2 separate pages and 2 different goals for the project and outcome. But as far as whenever you're going to lease, I'll tell you the most successful properties that we've seen have been owner managed and owner leased. The highest price per square foot that we've sold, owner operated, owner leased. because they can make the deal right then and there. They care about the project the most. They're on it. They're seeing it. When you have a third party, we've just seen so many of them get ran into the ground because they just don't hire the right folks. That's with anything. I mean, I'm sure you probably know it from being, especially on the residential side, so much, back in the day. I mean, how many third-party management companies are there that just don't really pay attention to stuff and don't look at stuff? And that's why in the commercial real estate world, I mean, there's a property management company on every corner, but there's very few that are very, very good. And so I think outlining the right management company and the right agent is going to be the key to success. And then, leasing it, keeping it out there, pre-leasing the right way, marketing to everybody. Like I said, I mean, if you're pre-leasing, and you got to go after those guys that are the larger users, that as they come to you and you've got the building built, you can build it to their specs and get them on a longer term lease, maybe a higher, price per square foot as well. So it's just capturing those guys. And then also making sure that you're on every marketing platform to give your property the best chance of leasing, right? Not just, your typical CoStar and LoopNet. I mean, there's so many others. There's Crexi. Our guys get a lot of business from Facebook, Craigslist, going to we missed it actually, but there's another one coming up, going to the small business and franchise expos. That's where a lot of those guys can be captured at as well. What are the sites we missed? In City Feet, 42 Floors. I mean, there are so many sites that you can put your property on to just have the maximum amount of exposure. And if you brand your park the right way and it's on all those sites the right way, man, when someone goes to Google search something, it's very easy to have your property pop up pretty quickly.
Now, folks, this is why this is the leading podcast for flex space. Cody just dropped some nuggets. For every developer out there, if you're not paying attention, he just literally dropped.
We need our nugget bill still. We never got one.
I know. We did, bro. That was it. That was it. There's two things.
Because SEO, and you know this. I mean, SEO, branding, having your website on everything, Google ads. I mean, all this stuff. It can all, if you do it the right way and it's all connected the right way, and you'll be the only one that pops up.
Yeah. Well, Cody, you made a really good point. And that is, you highlighted that some of the best sales that you get for parks are from owner-operators that fill their own building.
And manage their own. Yeah. Highest price per foot we've ever done.
And for a broker to say that, I mean, guys, this is an honest broker. This is a man
putting
of
us
God.
out of a job. Putting ourselves out of a job over here.
This is the man of the cloth right here. Look at
JCPenney's didn't see me coming, did they?
No, I love that.
That's just the truth.
Value right there.
John Fagan over Compass Realty. I mean, he's a guy I've known for a long time, and he's always, anytime we've sold something for him, it's always been the leading market dollar amount, the best cap rate, highest price per foot, and I mean, and that's why when you're doing this stuff, I mean, you want to go and take courses and learn and understand, how to manage, how to deal, how to talk to these guys. If you've never done it before, we always say, hey, go ahead and hire a leasing guy, go ahead and hire a management company, and then learn from them. And then when you think you're ready to take over, get it knocked out, because it's not just, deal, day-to-day dealing with tenants. I mean, you got the bookkeeping, you got everything like that in retrospect. And then when you got the tenants, it's keeping up with the leases, right? You want to approach these guys 6 months out. You want to make sure that you got a waiting list. You want to have a good, database that holds that waiting list, maybe even create a little newsletter for your park that just is very niche and very specific to it, and emailing all the tenants, hey, let's welcome our latest tenant. This is what they do. Maybe y'all can go collaborate with them, maybe not. But, creating a good synergy and family environment, those are the parks we like selling.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I got a final question. So a developer like myself, we fill up the building. What is sort of the seasoning, the stabilization time before we call Cody and Michael Tran and say, let's get rid of this sucker. Let's make that big money, that big exit.
I think it's very market dependent.
Yeah, it's very market dependent. It's very building dependent. I mean, if you're leading the market on rental rates and you're full, I mean, that's the best time to sell, right? When you're top of the top. People always ask us, hey, what cap rate can we sell at? And we're like, man, that's just a loaded question. It's depending on where you're at, right? The highest price per square foot we ever sold, I think, was like 7.25 cap rate. And that's because they were leading the market on rental rates, owner managed, owner leased. He was above market out there. And that's why I got the highest price per square foot. And the reason he was above market is because of how good of a manager they were there. So all those tenants, they could go anywhere else, but they're not going to get as well ran of a property as that one. And it was clean, had a couple amenities there. I mean, just a real nice, good location project, a lot of pride of ownership. And so I'd say, look, when it comes time to sell, it's, depending on where you're at on the market. I mean, we could sell it at any time, it's just, and how many people do we guide, train, and we go, look, we could sell it now, but if you do this, and this, we can sell for significantly higher. And we'd rather do that because Where we make our money is by selling stuff and breaking records in that market. That's where we really make our money, because we can take that to other owners, larger institutions, things of that nature, and say, look, we've now broken 40 records, 40 market records across Texas via cap rate, price per square foot. I mean, we are the team. So it doesn't do anything for us to go sell a project at $80 a foot. That doesn't do anything for us. It maybe makes us a paycheck, but it doesn't get us farther down the road. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get this product farther down the road. We want to keep going higher and higher on the per square foot sales price. And if we can continue to push that, we'll always be successful on our side.
That's amazing.
I think so.
I said that was my final question, but I have a follow-up question.
What is it? No more
Amenities.
questions. No.
Amenities. What kind of amenities should a flex space have?
What are your favorite, Mike?
I really like the high ceilings.
Yeah.
Because the tennis in me sees these pickleball people coming into these spaces, and dude, they're taking big blocks of space.
Taking big chunks too.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, I know
Those guys are payers.
Yeah, they'll pay. And I've seen the pricing they put on these places, because I want to go play when it's a rainy day and I can't play tennis.
There's baseball training facilities too. Those do. We just did one. They did a basketball training facility. Those guys are high dollar payers. The volleyball guys are high dollar payers. The gymnastic folks are high dollar payers.
What kind of ceiling heights do you need for that?
Pickleball people have specifically told me they like 24.
24.
The higher the better, but 24 is like 22 to 24 is ideal.
So you probably need to have your front at least 20.
Right.
To get that center around 27 or so.
That's right. Our buildings at Midlothian at their single slope, front end 23, back end about 19 something.
That works.
That could work, yeah.
Yeah, I think actually you can fit a pickleball court in there. You're good.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially, 20 feet all around, right?
But so high ceilings, what next?
Side yard.
Side yards, baby.
Yeah.
I'm sure I've said that before, huh?
Yeah.
We talk that one a lot just because we just seen it time and time again. Like we've seen it in 5 different case studies that it actually does help your rate. It definitely does help your retention, and you differentiate from other people.
Right.
Nobody has side yards, man.
Yeah.
It's
because it's hard. It's like
it takes away land.
It takes away land. It's chewing away some of your rental income, right? But and in some ways, though, it's also enhancing it. So I think, is there a perfect ratio or a way to approach that? I mean, because again, we're making the points right now. Me as a developer, I'm looking, how do I use most of the space I have for building in a parking lot, not side yards, right?
Yeah.
So at what point do I make that decision? Hey, I'd rather have a side yard than a bigger building.
I think if you're trying to really differentiate yourself, maybe you're going to a high competition area and nobody's got it. It's like the perfect thing to go in and stroll in with and, go in there to capture some of that tenant base. It's also great for rural areas as well. A lot of those guys are stacking and putting stuff in there. If you're going to get some car mechanics or something like that, it's another perfect thing.
Sure.
Out of sight, out of mind.
That's right.
So it really all
junkyard?
Yeah, it really all depends. Yeah, a little junkyard. Really all depends on the site, but there's usually areas that you can always segment a few. Not everybody has to have a side yard, but they can move along the side of buildings very easily. You can put them on the back side of them. I mean, there's ways of putting it in. But
sprinkle it in.
Yeah,
that's right.
But so besides ceiling heights, side yards, what would be your third best amenity that you would add on to a park?
For me, I think having like a shared dock high.
Shared dock, yeah. We've seen that in many places.
Whoa, y'all throwing curveballs now.
Yeah.
What do you think I was going to say?
I didn't have any thoughts, but I didn't expect the dock high. I did not expect that.
Project in Tyler I looked at.
Okay.
They had the sides lined with dock highs. Yeah. And everything else was grade low. This is a 100,000 square foot park.
It's a pretty big park. They had some larger size units too.
So let me make sense of the shared dock high. Can you give us a picture of what that looks like? A shared dock. I mean, I get a dock high, but now that we're sharing it, how does that work?
Basically, it's a concrete platform that is, and some people also have those rolling ones too, but a platform to where a 18-wheeler can actually unload from, without using a forklift, obviously.
Right.
And so, but you got to have an area in your park that those trucks can actually come in, turn around. Because, for the most part, 18-wheelers aren't coming into true small bay, right? Nobody can even fit an 18-wheeler off there because that's sometimes the size of their space.
Right.
But you do have certain businesses and whatnot, and especially some of the larger guys that can and do, but they need the accessibility and the turnaround ability to make that happen. And so if you're going to offer a plethora of sizes going up to 5, 6, 7, 8,000 square feet, some of those guys definitely need it.
But I'm still understand the shared part. Is there?
So it's just freestanding. It's just sitting out somewhere on the property that anybody can access. Yeah.
Okay.
Common area dock.
You would load up whatever you have, but then whoever's load it is, they come and pick it up and
That's
move
right.
it into their building.
Yep.
Okay.
We've even seen some that have it's like a rolling ramp too that they allow the tenants to share.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah.
Just have a forklift somewhere.
Yeah.
Be all right.
Yeah, there's the one group. There's a one flex park place that they had a forklift that anybody could share.
Right. Was
But-
that in Austin or something?
think I've
Yeah,
heard
out
of
there,
these,
out
yeah.
there, yeah, and but I don't think any of the tenants were forklift certified. So
That's what I was going to say. Like, I mean, can you imagine that happening? They're running into your building.
dude, yeah.
Oh my Lord. Yeah, that sounds like a disaster.
Yeah, I know, right? Just like,
Yeah.
hey, get Tim to go bring that forklift over here.
But back to my point on this shared dock, that park that we're talking about, their occupancy has dropped quite a bit in the last 2-3 years on those dock high units,
Mm-hmm.
and all his grade level has stayed full.
Mm-hmm.
So during downturns, as those tenants leave, there's not a lot of guys who can take down that kind of stuff. He's charging a premium for that space. And so what I would suggest is probably just do the shared dock.
Have it as an amenity, not a requirement.
Yeah.
So,
Space.
not to get in the weeds, but the developer to me is just like, how are the tenants moving that stuff around? Because I would imagine whenever you're unloading off of an 18-wheeler, you're still going to have the difficulty of offloading that into your own space, your tenant. Is that
No,
where that forklift-
we've got one. We've got one out there that we sold on Beach Street, and I mean, several of those tenants just have little pallet jacks that they just go up to,
Mhm.
pull it off,
And it-
wheel it to their space.
Wheels of space, and there's
Yeah.
a ramp, off ramp, and all that.
Yeah,
Okay.
all the truck
Um,
backs right up to the ramp, and then they can pull it off, take it down the ramp, take it to their space.
Yeah, I mean that works for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
But you don't ever want to make it like Tran said. You don't want to make it a permanent fixture on your flex space to where someone has to get in, because then most of your flex guys are grade level, which means you can
Yeah.
drive in like a driveway. You don't want to close those guys off and not let them have that, because that does hurt your leasing whenever all they have is a dock high. And we've seen flex parks built with dock high only and have trouble leasing.
Oh yeah, it's terrible
Yeah.
for a small user. And a lot of times too, on these 18-wheelers, they have for some reason. I was trying to think of this as we were talking, but it's slipping my brain. Where they have this system that they can drop down the pallets onto the ground off their truck.
Oh, box truck.
Oh yeah.
Box truck, but then also 18-wheelers have some of that capabilities
Oh, yeah.
too, where they can they take your pallet and they drop it down the ground, and then you can wheel it in with a pallet jack or whatever. Michael, thank you for coming in here.
Look at that.
Leasing.
Pulled them out, said, "Get on out here.
yeah.
You got to come talk, man."
We need to have you back. And
So he's got the best hair we'll have on this podcast.
that's
by far.
Well, between us two, Cody,
Yeah, I
there's
know.
not going to be a lot left.
I'm just
so
telling.
we have to.
I'm just telling him to keep the sides right now.
hey, are you going to ever consider doing kind of the hair transplants?
No,
The
I don't think
grafts,
so.
no?
I think once it goes back a little bit farther, we'll just take it all off, and I'll just be like you.
Yeah, go ball like me.
Yeah.
You got the head, bro.
So, yeah, I think so.
You got the head. You got that look.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll
Well,
see.
really appreciate it, guys. This was a fun session. I think we dropped some amazing nuggets. Developers, investors, future tenants, join our investor club. We're growing a community of people that are interested in flex space, and you got some of the top brokers right across from me, and just exciting time to be in flex space. Thank you, guys.
Always here to lend a hand, baby. Yeah.
Anytime.